Welcome to my channel, Talking Tech with D, and in this video, I'm going to talk about different job titles that you will see in software development. I want to make this video because I know there are a lot of tech titles out there, and some of them can be very confusing when you're trying to figure out what that person does. Or perhaps you just want to pursue a career in that field, and you get all these different titles, and none of them really make sense. Now, it all depends on the company, but I've seen companies come up with all kind of crazy titles, and the craziest one I've seen is digital overlord, or when they start calling people rock stars, or just something really vague like systems designer. Like, what is a PHP Rockstar? Whatever happened to simple stuff like webmaster or scripter? At some point that stuff got phased out. So anyway, this stuff ends up on resumes and no one really knows what it means. So I'm going to go over the four main titles that you should find on any software development team and the differences. Number one, coders. These are your junior guys or beginners just starting out. Could be self-taught, fresh out of college, boot camp, whatever. They don't have a ton of experience in software design, but they can code. Absolutely. They might only know one language and be great at it, but they're probably not building anything crazy. They're likely being assigned straightforward tasks by senior staff, which is fine because mentorship is huge for a coder and key to their success. Coders grow very fast, and you won't grow without mentorship. It just won't happen. Some people are put off or offended by the term or the title coder. There's nothing wrong with it at all. We were all coders at one point. Being in the trenches, getting your hands dirty is one of the best, if not the best way to learn. The last thing I'll say about coders is that if you search for the term in LinkedIn, on Indeed, you're going to get a lot of results back for medical billing coders. That's completely different. So for that reason, coders would rather just be called junior programmers, and that's more marketable anyway. So number two, programmers. As you may have guessed, these are just experienced coders. I call them tanks. They have the strongest problem-solving skills, usually know multiple languages, design patterns, algorithms, and more stuff that they can use to write more efficient code, and they know when to use it. Like a tank, they are equipped to work alone and work around any landmines that they encounter. And a landmine being unforeseen issues or a circumstance that stops development or makes you miss a deadline, those are landmines. Like with any job, it takes time to get there. Programmers spend more time contemplating design options and architectural stuff than a coder would. And they should. With that said, it's easy for these guys to become stagnant. They're working on the same stuff every day. They may not necessarily be learning or as thirsty and hungry to learn as a coder. So there's a saying that, if you don't adapt and, you let this younger crowd kind of pass you up, you usually end up as a middle manager, or you end up getting pushed out. So, or maintaining a legacy system at IBM somewhere, So it's always good to keep learning, even as a programmer. You'll likely find them in a corner in an empty office somewhere, headphones on, working alone. They probably don't want to be bothered. Number three, developers. This is where it gets a little confusing. Developers may or may not write code. I like to think of a real estate developer. They buy the land, they acquire the manpower, and then they basically orchestrate the job from start to finish. They have the option to physically participate. They want to paint a wall, move some stuff around, sure, but they don't have to. So developers are essentially project managers, working directly with the coders, the programmers, and whatever other stakeholder is involved to get it across the finish line. They may be customer facing, they might not be, but they definitely do a lot more talking, documenting, communicating than coding. Lastly, number four, engineers and architects. Engineers or architects are very experienced programmers and are very experienced in software architecture. Programmers are light tanks, but engineers are like heavy tanks. So that means they have to move a little slower, right? They spend the bulk of their time in meetings discussing design, QA, scalability, and just overall product quality. The actual overarching product rather than the smaller projects that the developers and the programmers are working on, as well as the coders. That may be a leadership role, but it's very likely. You'll see titles like lead or principal software engineer. They will likely be delegating tasks to developers and, if necessary, looping in programmers for input. Um, Depending on the team, they shouldn't have to interact directly with the coders. In my opinion, it's strictly a senior role. So stuff like junior engineer or junior architect, stuff you see out there, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. This is a person who should know how to architect a system from A to Z, and they are highly experienced. Now, in reality, all of this depends on the organization, and this is just my opinion. I've used all these titles at some point in my career. Hopefully, this added some color to what they mean. So next time someone says I'm a programmer, maybe ask them, hey, what kind of algorithmic code have you written? Do you know how to implement bubble sort? Stuff like that. They may be a coder, in my opinion. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Let me know, how does your organization differentiate between coders, programmers, developers, engineers, and where do you fit in? And next video, I'll be talking about how you or someone you know can get started as a coder or a junior programmer. And there are a lot of different avenues you can take. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned.